Chairman, Mr. President, Honorable Prime Minister, other members of government, Excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps, leaders of the private sector, representatives of civil society, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm not sure if indeed the President knew what I was going to say tonight. He came with another hat about a week and a half ago in the form of the Private Sector Commission. And I wasn't even aware that he was wearing this hat as the President of the Manufacturing Service Association. Two things I observed tonight. One is that this dinner came long after cocktail. When I looked at the time, it's 9 o'clock. And I'm like, do they really want me to say what I have to say, or do they want me to cut it short? Because after all, tomorrow is a working day. I'm told that I have the record for the longest budget speech from Minister of Finance. And I was hoping to do half of it tonight. I'm going to try. You're not hungry. So I know you're prepared to listen. I consider it an honor to have been invited to address this awards ceremony tonight. Let me express, therefore, my deep appreciation to the Ghana Manufacturing and Services Association Limited for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I'm speaking to you this evening not only in my capacity as Minister of Finance, but also as a friend of the business community. And by now you know I'm a friend indeed. And as a partner in the development of this beautiful country we call the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, working in partnership for our country's ascendancy and sustainability. Mr. Chairman, as you can no doubt attest, friends and partners agree most of the time. At times, however, there will be disagreements. So, tonight, I speak to you not expecting you to agree with all the things that I will say, nor do I expect you to conclude that the ideas are necessarily novel or imaginative, but because I think that it is vitally important that you understand the agenda of this government so that the critical role you are expected to play is better understood, and that there can be buy-in, so to speak, by the business sector going forward. I know that there are going to be teething problems in our relationship as we settle down to dealing with a new government after 23 years of what passed for governance by the previous administration. I know some of you are worried that the special relationship that you might have had with the last government will cease under this government, with consequent ramifications for your businesses. I'm not here to offer you any comfort or support where that is concerned. But the comfort I want to offer you lies in our fresh approach to doing business, where transparency and accountability meet good governance. This will be our North Star to the good life in the context of a green economy. In this new dispensation, every business, every sector can be expected to be treated in a manner that does not give rise to accusations of favoritism or special interest. To whom a favor is granted, much will be expected in return. It will be in your interest, therefore, not to ask for favors or concessions, for which a price can be extracted at a later date, but to lobby for an open, transparent, predictable system that does not rely on the whims and fancies of some low, middle, or high-level bureaucrat, the ideal fuel for growing the monster of corruption. Before I proceed, I just want to put Guyana in some context. Guyana is a small country by global standards. We have a land area of 214,970 square kilometers and a population which declined from 751,223 persons in census 2002 to 741,884 persons by census 2012. Most of the population lives in the coastline regions, with the rest scattered on about 67% of the land in the hinterland and outer reaches. Any policy for bridging the divide between the coast and the hinterland regions has to address the issue of infrastructural development in order to encourage migration to the highland regions and make the benefits from increased business activity accessible to a wider market. Guyana has a plenitude of natural resources, including fertile agricultural lands, vast areas of tropical hardwood forests of various ecosystems, a multitude of plant and animal species, abundant fish and shrimp grounds, both in its numerous rivers and in the Atlantic Ocean, a wide variety of minerals, including gold, diamonds, a range of semi-precious stones, bauxite, and manganese. These provide real opportunities for private sector development, sometimes on their own, in partnership with foreign and local investors, and/or in partnership with the government. Moreover, because of its many rivers and close to 365 days of sunshine, its potential for renewable energy sources, including hydropower, is immense. Mr. Chairman, let me summarize what we have. We have found oil, called black gold. We have mineral gold in the form of yellow gold. We have rich agricultural lands, brown gold. We have an abundance of water, liquid gold. We have incredible weather devoid of hurricanes, nature's gold. And we have an incredible diversity of races, human gold. Added to that golden listing is the known fact that Guyanese worldwide are renowned for their golden hearts. So, Mr. Chairman, why does Guyana find itself into this paradox of being one of the poorest countries in CARICOM and the Western Hemisphere, while sitting on a treasure trove of national endowments and riches? Why is our growth rate so anemic? Why is our unemployment rate hovering between 10 and 20%, as suggested by some reports, with even higher rates in hinterland and rural areas, and in communities such as Linden? Why is our savings rate so low, at just about 5% of GDP? Why is our poverty rate over 36%, according to our 2006 estimate? Principally as a result of high gold prices, which fuel an upsurge in gold production, and a special arrangement on the Petro-Caribbean, which allowed for a premium price to be paid for over 100,000 tons of rice and paddy, the economy averaged in excess of 4% growth up to 2013. However, by 2014, growth had slipped under 4% and was under 1% in the first half of this year. While the fiscal deficit remains manageable, our debt situation at over 65% of GDP will be a challenge to the public sector's ability to provide the necessary infrastructure and other facilities and services. The World Bank is unflattering in its assessment of doing business in Guyana. According to the Doing Business indicators, Guyana's overall rank is 123. Cost of starting a business, as a percent of income per capita is 11.5%. It takes an average of 195 days to deal with construction permits. It takes an average of 75 days to register a property, and the total tax is 32% of profits. There is vast room for improvement if we want to encourage our private sector to make a meaningful contribution to economic growth and the reduction of poverty. We must be keenly alert to the vulnerabilities and challenges which our economy faces. The business sector represents an engine of growth and employment in this country. However, we appreciate that this sector faces obstacles, including access to finance. Environmental vulnerabilities are ever present and can have detrimental effects on our economy. We deal with rainy seasons, flooding, and droughts. There is a very high probability that at least one of these phenomena will occur each year. By mid-year 2015, the forestry, sugar, rice, and fisheries subsectors had all been affected by environmental factors, resulting in lower economic activities and export activities, and balance of payments problems. The effects of climate change now requires investment in climate change adaptation and disaster risk management, which, though challenging, present new opportunities for private sector involvement. We operate in a competitive world where countries produce similar products and often much more efficiently than we do. Guyana's economy still depends heavily on the production and export of primary commodities. We also have vulnerabilities due to export and import concentration. If there are global price and demand changes, these shocks are felt throughout the economy, including our balance of payments. Yet, repeated budget speeches of the last administration point to, quote, the resilience of the economy, failing to acknowledge and recognize that the economy's characteristics have changed little in the last 50 years. Maintaining a stable political climate remains a priority for this government. As we have experienced over the last 12 months, the prolonged political country temps of prorogation, dissolution, and the eventual holding of elections engendered a lack of confidence in the future, reflected in delayed investment decisions, a fall-off in investments, reduced public and private sector spending, etc. The consequence of all of that was the inevitable contraction of the economy. However, encouragingly, the data for private sector credit for the third quarter have shown growth. This is indicative of an improvement in the private sector outlook, for which we are quite happy. We must also keep in perspective that Guyana's economy is producing, in many cases, with aged machinery and aged production processes. So, Mr. Chairman, let's recap what we are faced with. We are relatively small in terms of population, landmass, and size of the economy. We are open, leaving our economy vulnerable to international fluctuations in demand and prices. And we have good potential, but still too high poverty and unemployment. In other words, Mr. Chairman, we are constrained by a dependent and uncompetitive economy that is highly exposed and vulnerable to external and environmental shocks, changes in terms of trade, and foreign investment flows. Over time, this can result in major hurdles to sustain growth and poverty reduction. But, Mr. Chairman, this doesn't have to be so. So let's understand what are the public policy implications and how our government intends to respond, or have been responding. Mr. Chairman, these otherwise uncomplimentary characteristics do not have to continue to be structural impediments to growth. We can grow from this if we are energetic, fearless, imaginative, and wise. We have to be the initiators of policies, projects, and programs that aim to harness the creative potential of our private sector into the reality of sustainable development of our country. We must release the productive force and entrepreneurial spirit of individuals, companies, and groups. Guyana's best days are ahead, and I truly believe this. Our president truly believes this. Our coalition government truly believes this. And tonight, I hope I can make you into believers too. I firmly believe that Guyana, with the correct rebalancing of our economy, with strategic interventions both by government and the private sector, we will achieve the potential about which we keep hearing. So how can this be accomplished? Our President, His Excellency David Arthur Granger, has called for Guyana to become a green economy. His Excellency reaffirmed this call on the international stage when, on September 25th this year, he signed the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development at the United Nations with over 190 other world leaders. This is our President's vision for prosperity. This is our country's blueprint for sustainable green development. This 2030 Agenda has also been adopted by the global private sector. Hence, for the first time, all development partners, governments, private sector, civil society, and international development institutions are in agreement on the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of development, as well as the means of implementation of this agenda, namely finance, technology, and human capital, among others. We in this room tonight are obligated by Guyana's commitment to the 17 goals and 169 targets of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is we who are in this room who can and must take the leadership role to transform Guyana into a resilient nation of high growth in which all our citizens can benefit. It is we who are in this room who must take ownership of the process of making Guyana a nation at peace with itself, its neighbors, and the international community. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development gives us the architecture to achieve all of these things while allowing for individual and collective prosperity. Its 17 goals are full of high growth opportunities and potential for all of us. For example, goal number 1 says no poverty. Goal number 2, zero hunger. Goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. As manufacturers, the opportunities inherent in these few goals alone should provide an economic paradise for us all. Why? Because in Guyana, manufacturing must become a key driver of rapid economic growth and the associated creation of employment, both directly and indirectly. There is considerable accumulated evidence that manufacturing still functions as the heart of the economic development process. 10 of the 13 success stories around the world were cases of manufacturing-led growth. Brazil, China, Indonesia, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, China, and Thailand. The 3 exceptions are small single commodity exporters, Botswana and Oman, and Hong Kong, a small financial offshore center. To transcend our sugar and our rice and other product issues, we must manufacture. We must add value. Mr. Chairman, I cringe at the state of our manufacturing sector in our country. Too many of our private sector players seem content to chase after the quick dollar by importing a lot of cheap stuff to be sold in a low-wage economy. Some of the things are of such poor quality and low standard that I marvel that they could find a market in Guyana. I reflect on the 1970s and 1980s, periods in our history that were characterized by economic crises that led to banning and restrictions of many items. And I recall the inventions, innovations, and the sheer will to survive that those crises called forth. In those trying times, more goods were manufactured, canned, or assembled domestically. I recall vehicles, bicycles, refrigerators, freezers, radio, matches, toothpaste, and so on. In the agricultural sector, we had canned pineapple and orange juice, smoked and other forms of ham, salted fish, and so forth. Even in the 1980s, an enterprising Frenchman took heart of palm, canned it in a place not known for its electricity, and exported the finished product to French Guiana and France. So what is wrong with us, Mr. Chairman? Leadership is needed in the area of technology adoption. We must use technology and innovation to become globally competitive. The whole private sector must lead in the effort to adopt new technologies and to be more innovative. Yes, we need cheap energy to open the floodgates of manufacturing. We also need good economic and political governance to open the floodgates of prosperity. Let me assure you that our government is committed to providing cheap and reliable energy, goal number 7 of the SDGs. We are involved currently with the IDB to study the correct energy matrix and energy mix for Guyana to meet our needs for the next 30 years. This study is due early next year, and it will include the analysis of 5 hydro sites, including the Amalia site as well. And while on the Amalia Falls project, Mr. Chairman, permit me to announce that the government is in discussions with Norway to procure yet another review of this project. Norway seems to be keen to finance an independent review to, once and for all, pronounce on the viability or non-viability of this project. So on that particular aspect, I hope it is absolutely clear that contrary to reports that we have abandoned the project and whatnot, that the project has always been on the board now. As to which front or back, I don't know. Further, anticipated zones of growth include the intermediate savannas for agriculture and the harnessing of wind power, biomass, and solar for energy. I should like to use this opportunity here to remind you that the government recently approved a clean energy project by a private developer, which will see 25 megawatts of clean wind-generated power being sold to the national grid. With this energy matrix, rice and sugar, for example, shall have better cost structures, especially if our private sector partners with the government transform these industries through technological innovation, visionary thinking, and competitive marketing. My ministry is open to working with the private sector to clear all hurdles in the path to more competitiveness. I have established a tax reform committee to examine all aspects of the tax system. Please remember I told you that it's better to have a predictable, transparent system as opposed to concessions. So this committee has engaged and received inputs from many stakeholders, inclusive of the private sector. The report of the committee, which is due by the end of this year, will be critical to informing tax reforms as we go forward. In a recent meeting with the Private Sector Commission, we committed to meeting quarterly instead of the annual pilgrimage for budget consultations. Currently, the PSC and GRA, which is of course a part of the Ministry of Finance, and which has been announced by the President, have established mechanisms for meeting on a regular basis to address issues affecting the business community. I urge that you take full advantage of this avenue to significantly improve processes and timeframes so as to improve our competitive edge. The address To address the ease of doing business in Guyana, the Ministry of Business was created. Its business agenda is central to achieving inclusive growth and national unity. The Ministry of Business has identified 5 goals, the achievement of which will ultimately lead to a more prosperous business community. Goal number 1, improve the ease of doing business in Guyana. Goal number 2, attract increased foreign investments in our economy. Goal number 3, support the development and exports of value-added industries. Goal number 4, increase the economic opportunities and capabilities of vulnerable groups. And goal number 5, expand our capacity to develop and promote sustainable business-friendly policies. The Guyana Office for Investment, Go Invest, is being streamlined and strengthened so as to accelerate investment. A new board of directors has been constituted. A new head of the agency has been advertised. And international funding is being sought for a private sector development project that will include components dealing with the swaps and a one-click button linking GRA, deeds registry, lands and surveys, and so on, all with the aim of cutting red tape and freeing the system that is stifling private sector growth. To further enable the environment, government has been discussing the idea of a development bank to ensure our manufacturers, agro-processors, and service providers have access to capital to gain a competitive edge in the areas of our greatest comparative advantage, which is food security. In this context, we have just requested the Caribbean Development Bank to commission a study to examine the demand for and the feasibility of establishing such a financial institution. Presently, we have some funding for small businesses in the form of the Rural Development Fund and the Small and Micro Enterprises Development Fund. This government recognizes that micro enterprises can be promoted as a means of establishing economic independence for our youth. As indeed a recent Caribbean Development Bank study has estimated, 40% of youth are unemployed, which indicates an urgent need to address this problem. Our president is keenly interested in tackling youth unemployment, and one way of doing so is to encourage entrepreneurship among our young people. Permit me, Mr. Chairman, to touch a little bit on the green economy, since this is an area that we intend to promote. Guyana today is classified as a low middle income, resources-driven economy. Resource-driven economies are mainly successful when 6 core elements are present. 1, building the institutions and governance of the resources sector. 2, developing infrastructure. 3, ensuring robust fiscal policy and competitiveness. 4, supporting local content. 5, deciding how to spend a resources windfall wisely. We think we with Exxon oil. And 6, transforming resource wealth into broader economic development. Today, as we seek to become a green economy, several of these core elements are also necessary for implementing a low carbon trajectory towards a green economy. Our government inherited the low carbon development strategy and is committed to the REDD+ arrangement and the partnership that we have with Norway. However, the strategy needs to be placed within the context of a fully integrated and mutually supportive legal, regulatory, fiscal, and financial framework. Further, the LCDS cannot be a substitute for a long-term development plan, nor for long-term development planning. Thus, to address this lacuna, the government has approached the Caribbean Development Bank to strengthen our capacity for long-term planning. This may necessarily involve the re-establishment of the State Planning Secretariat. A major challenge facing Guyana is how the country must leapfrog the lack of an industrial age revolution through a low-carbon trajectory to create a sustainable green economy, in which manufacturing plays a significant role in job creation. Even more problematic is the absence of a human resources pool to successfully execute the LCDS to green economy transition. This is why our government, through the Minister of Education, has been speaking about STEM education and of a retooled and refocused University of Guyana. We hope the private sector, and especially manufacturers, can join hands in strengthening UG and create mutually beneficial partnerships. For Guyana to optimize and maximize its manufacturing competitiveness, given our focus on a green economy and a low-carbon pathway, our government plans to engage the private sector, civil society, and our development partners in an ongoing process of national dialogue so that we can reach a national consensus on the sustainability of a singular LCDS approach to sustainable development. Let me now touch on partnerships, inclusiveness, and private sector leadership. Before I close, Mr. Chairman, I want to share with you tonight some thoughts on partnerships, inclusiveness, and private sector leadership. Goal number 17 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development speaks to partnerships. In order for the private sector to become the true engine of growth and the strategic co-development partner with the government, it has to re-engineer itself. A sober analysis of the private sector will reveal several characteristics. First, the Guyana private sector is a relatively young private sector. We have no multinational or mainstream international companies. We have exporters and resellers, as well as few manufacturers, and even fewer who actually export to CARICOM and further afield. In fact, Mr. Chairman, no product of Guyanese origin is a household name in CARICOM, save and except perhaps El Dorado rum. If Barbados can sell us sugar cake, Trinidad can sell us fried channel in plastic bottles, assorted tamarind balls and fudge in boxes. If we can import matches from as far as Czech Republic and Poland, or plantain and cassava chips from Central America, why can't we manufacture these basic products where we have all the ingredients grown locally and sell it to our neighbors? Isn't it a crying shame that Caribbean Airlines serves plantain chips made in Central America, or serves coffee or tea sweetened by sugar that doesn't carry the sweet Demerara Gold label? Isn't this a shame indeed, Mr. Chairman? We have to do better. Second, the private sector is technologically unsophisticated, having never gone through an industrial revolution. Our infrastructure, technology, marketing, sophistication, global competitiveness, and industrialization stage confirm this. Third, the private sector, for the most part, has been inward-looking in its orientation, a paradox in itself, given that the domestic market is very small, while Guyana enjoys tremendous comparative advantages in many areas, and has several bilateral and multilateral trade and economic agreements. Fourth, Guyana has a significant underground economy that undermines the real economy and distorts the competitive forces in our economy. Tonight, I want to challenge the private sector in general, and the Guyana Manufacturers and Services Association in particular, to take the leadership role in nurturing and promoting more broad-based and inclusive growth. This existing private sector, with its access to capital and its many domestic and international networks, must include the historically excluded in its business planning. Contract farming is a model of inclusiveness. Subcontracting is another successful global model. We are one economic family. We share the same patrimony. Mr. Chairman, Guyana cannot develop with one eye one leg and one arm. We have to strive for more broad-based inclusiveness. So let me close, Mr. Chairman, by offering these few words. Our economy will become one of the most envied in the Caribbean, and there's no doubt about that. We have all the natural endowments to achieve this. We are transforming Guyana into a vibrant, sustainable, inclusive, and green economy. Join us in this quest. The private sector can lead through visionary leadership. We can do this together. Together, we can bring a good life to all Guyanese. I want to thank you for inviting me and for this engagement tonight. Best wishes for the coming Christmas season. I look forward to engaging you in an even more productive sense in 2016 and the years ahead. I thank you.